Welcome to the Wisdom That Breathes channel. Across all our platforms, we try to share wisdom which is relevant and accessible to everyone. But on this particular platform, we go deeper into some of the ancient principles found within the scriptures. If you find some of the terminology difficult or inaccessible, then go over to our Keshava Swami YouTube channel where you'll be able to find other content which is perhaps more relatable. Thank you and enjoy the wisdom that breathes.
Yashodanandana Raja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Raja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Raja Janaranjana Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Jai Gaura Hari Bol. Jai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Jai Gaura Hari Bol. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Om Jnana-timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Bhagavan Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuga Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Vijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam
Sagala Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopikakanta Radha Kanta Namostute Bhakta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishwabhanu Sudevi Pranamami Hari Priya Mancha Kalpatarobhyascha Kripa Sindhubhayeva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So Hare Krishna everyone, thank you so much for coming. So I was thinking what we could discuss in the mornings and I had different ideas, but I thought we could do this. Can you see that? You can see that. So I thought we could speak about someone who's very, very special to all of us, the spiritual master of our founder Acharya, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who is known as the Simha Guru, Lion Guru. And it's really, really important that we understand the mood, the mission, the life of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, because as we do, we will be able to understand Srila Prabhupada in a very beautiful way also. And so in the next few days, we'll be talking about him. The Parampara are beautiful because the Parampara are not just historical personalities, but the Parampara and each individual in the Parampara is someone we can have a living relationship with. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada writes in the beginning of the Bhagavatam that the spiritual master lives forever in his instructions and the follower lives with him. And so those who understand the heart of each of these members of the Parampara, they're able to actually connect with them. So we will try to discuss a little bit. Of course, when they ask Srila Prabhupada, can you say something about your spiritual master? Prabhupada simply looked down, he smiled and he said, what can I say? He was a Vaikuntha man. And that was Prabhupada's analysis of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. But we'll try to discuss a little bit. So today I thought just to frame the subject, we'll talk about the Parampara. And so I thought we could read a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. This is from the very first canto, where it's being described how Parikshit is going to now be instructed by Sukadev Goswami in the beautiful teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam. So please repeat after me. Sadhu sam shravayam asha Maharajam Parikshitam Prayo Pravistam Gangaya Paritam Paramarshibhi Satu Samshravayam Asha Maharajam Parikshitam Prayopavistam Gangaya Paritam Paramarshibhi Satu Samshravayam Asha Maharajam Parikshitam Prayopavistam Gangaya Paritam Paramarshibhi. Anyone wants to try? Sadhu Samshravayam Asha Maharajam Parikshitam Prayopavistam Gangayam Sadhu Samshravayam Asha Prayopavistam Gangayam Sadhu Samshravayam Asha Maharajam Parikshitam Prayopavistam Gangayam Paritam Paramarshibhi. Sadhu Samshravayam Asha Parikshitam Prayopavistam Gangayam Paritam Paramarshibhi. Sadhu Samshravayam Asha Maharajam Parikshitam Paritam Paramarshibhi. Sadhu Samshravayam Asha Maharajam Parikshitam Prayopavistam Gangayam Paritam Paramarshibhi. Thank you so much. My apologies, I forgot to put the word for word, but we'll just go to the translation. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Sukadeva Goswami, the son of Vyasadeva, in turn delivered the Bhagavatam to the great Emperor Parikshit, who sat surrounded by sages on the bank of the Ganges, awaiting death without taking food or drink. So the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam is like a preface of the whole literature. Actually, the conversation between Parikshit and Sukadeva Goswami doesn't actually begin until the second canto. But in the first canto, we're hearing about all the events which lead up to this great conversation. Just like the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita isn't really a conversation, it's just Arjuna letting out all his anxiety. This is what a therapist usually does. First, they just let the person talk for an hour. Just let it all out. And then after Arjuna asks a question, that what is my duty? Dharma samuda jetaha shishyasteham. Then Krishna starts speaking. So in the same way, the first canto of the Bhagavatam is just like the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. It's just setting the scene. So here we're being told that Parikshit has now gone to the Ganga. Sometimes it said the Ganga, sometimes it said the Yamuna, whichever one it may be. He is now going to be instructed by Sukadev Goswami. And these are the first two paragraphs of the purport. All the transcendental messages are received properly in the chain of disciplic succession. This disciplic succession is called parampara. Therefore, unless the Bhagavatam or any other Vedic literatures are received through the parampara system, the reception of knowledge is not bona fide. Vyasadeva delivered the message to Sukadev Goswami, and from Sukadev Goswami, Sutta Goswami received the message. One should therefore receive the message of the Bhagavatam from Sutta Goswami or from his representative and not from any irrelevant interpreter. Emperor Parikshit received the information of his death in time, and he at once left his kingdom and family and sat down on the bank of the Ganges to fast till death. All great sages, rishis, philosophers, mystics, etc. went there due to his imperial position. They offered many suggestions about his immediate duty, and at last it was settled that he would hear from Sukadev Goswami about Lord Krishna. Thus the Bhagavatam was spoken to him. Srila Prabhupada ki. Parikshit is in a difficult situation. Parikshit is understanding that life has now become very, very acute because his life is now coming to an end, and therefore Parikshit is having questions. Just like Arjuna had some level of confusion, Parikshit is also trying to clear his mind so that he can meet with death appropriately. Therefore, when confused, he did the right thing. Just as Arjuna did the right thing, they approached someone in the parampara. Life is confusing, and therefore often in life we have many, many questions. In fact, it's said in Shastra, Maya Mugdha Jivara Nahi Swata Krishna Gyan, that all of the living entities in this world basically are Maya Mugdha, confused, confused.com. It's interesting, at every stage of life there's confusion. When you're kind of in your younger years, there's confusion because you have so many decisions to make and you have no idea, where should I go here, should I go there, should I get married, should I not get married? Yes, I'll get married. Should I get married to this person or this person? Okay, I'll get married to this person. Should we live here or there? If we live there, should I do this job or that job? So many decisions to make. Therefore, in our young years, we're confused often. But confusion ensues because even in the middle years of your life, you can get confusion. They call it midlife crisis. Someone recently told me, how old are you? I said, 44. He said, you're in the zone for a midlife crisis. Because sometimes even in the middle of your life, you get confused. Who am I? Where am I? Where am I going? Am I doing the right thing? And it's interesting, even in old age, you can get confused. Because you look back at your whole life and you think, what did I do? You know, and therefore confusion. So Shastra says, Maya Mugdha Jivara. Basically, everyone in the world is confused. Svata Krishna Gyan. And they don't know. They don't know who they are, where they are, and what the purpose of their life is. However, there's a good news. Jivere Kripaya. To bestow grace on the living entities. Krishna Koila Veda Puran. Krishna, as Vyasadeva, came to the world and compiled the Vedic literatures. So if you want to decode the confusion of life, then it's very, very simple. The Vedic scriptures, the Shastra, has all the answers. However, the Shastra can't be understood independently. The Shastra must be understood from the person who has imbibed Shastra, from the person who is living Shastra, from the person who has dedicated their life to sharing it and explaining it. And therefore, here Srila Prabhupada is mentioning in the purport, transcendental messages must be received from the parampara. Parampara is very beautiful. It literally means, the word parampara literally means one after another. Keeps going. It never stops. Sometimes there's a philosophy that the parampara stops, but that's not the principle. Jai Shri Shri Panchatattva Ki. The relationship between guru and disciple is a very, very mystical relationship. It's said that what the disciple does is first they touch the heart of the guru. And when the disciple touches the heart of the guru, then the guru reveals their heart to the disciple. And when the guru reveals the heart to the disciple, then the disciple understands the heart of the guru. And when the disciple understands the heart of the guru, then the guru fills the heart of the disciple with bhakti, or awakens that bhakti within the heart of the disciple. And then it's interesting because that disciple who has become filled with the grace of their guru, if another person comes and touches their heart, then they become a guru. And then they reveal their heart. And then that disciple of the disciple understands their heart. And then that first disciple fills their heart. And then like this, one by one, the message of Krishna is passed down. Therefore it said, Dharmasya tattvam nihitam guhayam mahajano yena gata sabandha. That the truths of Shastra are not just read in books, but the truths of Shastra are hidden within the hearts of the great Vaishnavas, those who are in parampara. And so the whole principle is that we must hear not just knowledge, but knowledge from someone who is a living example of the knowledge. Kaviraj Goswami says there are two Bhagavatas. There's the book Bhagavata and there's the person Bhagavata. Grantha Bhagavata and Vyakti Bhagavata. And both must be understood and served side by side. And so here Sukadev Goswami is a relevant person to instruct Parikshit because he has become a good disciple. He's a disciple of Vyasadeva, but not just any disciple, someone who has understood the heart of Vyasadeva. To become a good disciple is not an easy thing. The Niti Shastra explains that there are 6 types of incompetent disciple. Ali Bana Jyotishaka Stabdi Bhuta Kimekaka Preshakas Preshita Chaiva Sadete Sevakadhama. This verse is mentioned and it compares incompetent disciples to 6 different things. The first type of lesser disciple is called the Ali, which means a bee-like disciple. A bee goes from flower to flower, taking a little bit of nectar from everywhere and then moving on again and again, and like that collecting from different places, but not really committed, not really dedicated, not really chaste to any one place. And so the first type of lesser disciple is like this. They like to hear, but they hear from everyone and they like to hear from those who tell them what they like to hear. And they may not dedicate themselves to someone who may tell them nice things, who may tell them difficult things, who may tell them challenging things. And therefore, that inability to commit to one individual in whom we place our faith means that we may not get the full fruit. Bana is the second type of lesser disciple. This means an arrow-like disciple. So Niti Shastra says that some disciples are like an arrow. When you tell them something, they shoot back at you. They always have a response, they always have an argument, they always have a reservation, and even if the arrow-like disciple doesn't say it, when they're told something, in their mind they're rebelling against that. The Shastra, Niti Shastra also says arrow-like disciple means a disciple that is supposed to give pleasure to the spiritual master, but often simply gives problems. The third type of lesser disciple is known as Jyotishaka, which means an astrologer disciple. That doesn't mean they've learned astrology, but what it means is that they're the disciple who is always putting it off. I'm waiting for the right time. When the constellation is in this position and the planet moves here and Saturn moves away and the influence of Rahu is not there, and when everything is perfect in the constellation, then I'll do it. In other words, waiting for some kind of constellation that happens once every 10,000 years. And just delaying what the spiritual master wants from the disciple, praying for, waiting for a time in the future, just now coming. The fourth type of lesser disciple is known as Stabdi Bhuta. Stabdi Bhuta means basically lazy. They know what they need to do, they know the time is right, but they hold back. They hold back their strength, their effort, their energy. They hold back their intelligence. Don't fully engage themselves, don't fully give themselves. Laziness, lethargy. I know what I should do, but I don't know, I don't feel inspired. The fifth type of lesser disciple is known as Kimeikaka. Sanskrit is an interesting language. Ekaka means alone, and Kim means almost like why. So Kimeikaka literally means the why me alone disciple. And what that means is that this type of disciple is looking out around at everyone saying, but they're not doing it, that person's not doing it, nobody's doing it, why should I do it alone? And therefore they justify their inability to follow something by saying nobody else is doing it, so Kimeikaka, why should I just do it myself? But of course, if Srila Prabhupada had been a Kimeikaka disciple, then the whole Hare Krishna movement wouldn't have come about. So he looked around and saw nobody is doing it, but maybe I should do it. Therefore, this is also another type of lesser disciple. And the final type of lesser disciple is known as Preshita Preshakas, which means pass the buck disciple. And what that means is they learn many amazing things. They hear many amazing things from their spiritual master, and they just tell everyone else. This is what I heard. This is what you should do. These are the instructions. In other words, they receive such wealth in terms of the instructions from the spiritual master, but all they do is just tell other people about it, but not follow it themselves. Pass the buck. So this is very interesting, this verse in Niti Shastra, because if you just turn around every single one of these, then you can understand how to become a bona fide disciple. Firstly, don't be like the bee. Instead, dedicate yourself to someone who knows you, who loves you, and who has the spiritual advancement to help you. And in that way, they can reveal so many things to you. Don't be like the arrow-like. Even when something challenging is said by a spiritual teacher, sit with it, wait. Even if it feels like it's beyond you or it's not relevant, just wait. Don't fight it. All will be revealed in time. And then don't wait for some astrological kind of constellation for something to happen. As soon as one gets an instruction, they can start working on it from day one, even if they can't follow it immediately. And then like this, to not be lazy, but to be very, very enthusiastic. And then not to look around and see everyone else who's not doing it, but to look around and see good examples, to look around and see opportunity, to look around, do it, and if nobody else is doing it, to start doing it yourself, and then encourage others to also do it with you. And then finally, not to just tell others, but to be a good disciple by living the instructions so that other people look at you and say, wow, you're living those instructions. Maybe I should follow the same thing, because clearly you followed it and amazing things have happened in your life. And so like this, the parampara goes on because the guru is bona fide and the disciple is bona fide. And like this, it comes down. And if we're fortunate to receive the message in this line, then we can learn amazing things. So in the end of the introduction of the Bhagavad Gita, this is given, the disciplic succession that we're in. We may not realize our fortune, but we are all actually connected to the most elevated personalities in creation. It's actually inconceivable that, our names would even be added to this list. But that is the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, who connected us through his followers to this parampara. So here Srila Prabhupada in the top quotes a verse, Evam parampara praptam imam rajar shayo vidu. This is the second verse of the fourth chapter of the Gita, which is entitled Transcendental Knowledge. And just before this verse, Krishna explains to Arjuna that I instructed this imperishable science to who? Vivasvan, the sun god. And the sun god imparted it to who? Ikshvaku. And Ikshvaku imparted it to who? Manu, Vaivashvata Manu. And like this, he explains that the knowledge comes down. Of course, sometimes people ask when they look at this list that if Krishna re-established the parampara through Arjuna, then why is Arjuna not in this list? Sometimes people ask that question. So actually, Srila Prabhupada writes in the 13th chapter of the third canto, this line of disciplic succession from Brahma is spiritual. Prabhupada is saying this one is a spiritual line, whereas the genealogical succession from Manu is material, but both are on the progressive march towards the same goal of Krishna consciousness. So this is very important to understand that there are two lines of disciplic succession, two types of parampara. One type of parampara is known as a spiritual parampara, seminal parampara. This is what Prabhupada calls a material. Shukra means seminal. And in this parampara, knowledge is passed down from the father to the son, or from the seniors to the juniors, and is passed down through the Raja Rishis. So Krishna, Vivashvan, Manu, Ikshvaku, like that. That's one line. And what Krishna is basically saying to Arjuna is that this line, which was coming through the Raja Rishis, this one got broken. And therefore now Arjuna and the Pandavas, you are the Raja Rishis. So I'm instructing you so that this line can be re-established. So when Krishna says, I re-established the parampara, what he's talking about is he re-established the seminal parampara. But then there's a spiritual parampara. And that parampara begins from the time of creation, because that parampara goes from Krishna to Brahma to Narad to Vyas, the one that we saw at the end of the introduction to the Gita. So this parampara goes from spiritual master to disciple. The other one goes from kings to the subjects and comes down through genealogy This one goes from spiritual master to disciple, and anyone can enter this if they become a good disciple. And therefore, which line are we in? The spiritual line. And therefore it's said that these are the two paramparas, seminal and spiritual. Seminal is passed down through the Raja Rishis, spiritual is passed down through the saintly persons, and the current state of both of these is that the seminal one is practically lost. I don't know how many of you have fathers, grandfathers or great-grandfathers who are Raja Rishis. Is practically not there anymore. Therefore, the way that we can access knowledge is through the spiritual line, through the line coming from Krishna to Brahma to Narada to Vyas. Yeah. Anyone have any questions on this before I go forward? Yes.
Do you know if the line coming down from Krishna instructing Arjuna, if that is still active today?
So that's mentioned here, that of course we know the Bhagavatam gives the history. After Krishna instructed Bhagavad Gita and the Pandavas went on the throne, then later on we hear about how Parikshit is installed on the throne, and then we hear about how Parikshit gets cursed and then Janamejaya goes on the throne, and then the Bhagavatam actually explains the lineage. So it's the Pandavas, Parikshit, Janamejaya, and then there are kings, and then the Bhagavatam actually explains in the 12th canto how that lineage gets corrupted. So basically, although Krishna instructed the Gita in the seminal parampara, it was noted by Vyasadeva, of course, who's in the spiritual parampara, and therefore we take the knowledge of the Gita that Krishna gave to Arjuna. But basically the line from Krishna instructing Arjuna, that line coming down through Raja Rishis, is practically not there anymore. In some remote parts of India, there may still be some lineages in the genealogical line, but most of it is corrupted. Therefore, even sometimes those who grow up in Indian families have like family gurus, kula gurus. But oftentimes there's not so much necessarily substantial spiritual divya gyan there. It's more just ritualistic and cultural. So a lot of it, as Krishna says, yoga nashta, it has been lost. Like that. Okay. Anything else? Okay, so I thought it'd be nice just to go through the parampara. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur actually writes a beautiful song about the whole parampara. Krishna hoite chatur mukha. And the song begins that Krishna at the dawn of creation, when Krishna instructs Brahma to create this whole world, to engineer this whole world, then along with instructing Brahma to engineer the whole world, the 14 planetary systems, the 8.4 million species of life, Krishna simultaneously gives all of the knowledge to come out of the universe. Therefore, it's explained in the very first verse of the Bhagavatam, Janma Dyasya Yaton Vayad Itaratas Charteshva Bhigya Swarat Tene Brahma Reda Ya Adi Kavaye Muyanti Yat Surayaha. That Krishna within the heart, Tene Brahma Reda, within the heart of Brahma, Krishna actually imparts all the knowledge in 4 seed verses. So those 4 seed verses of the all Vedic theology are contained within the 2nd canto of the Bhagavatam. And it said that in those 4 verses, Brahmaji basically learned everything that he needed to learn. And in that way, Brahma became enlightened. And then it's explained that Brahma had many, many different sons. And it said that Brahma gave different areas of knowledge to different sons. So for example, one son of Brahma was Daksha. So Daksha was said to receive the karma yoga part of Brahma's knowledge. Then it's said that Brahma had other sons, like the 4 Kumaras. And the 4 Kumaras received the Jnana Kanda section of Brahma's knowledge. But then Brahma had other sons, and of them perhaps Narad was the foremost. And it said that Brahma instructed Narad in the bhakti section of all the knowledge he has, and we understand that bhakti is the essence of everything. And therefore it said that Brahma imparted all the knowledge to Narada. Narada, his name literally means, Da means to give, and Nara means Narayana. So Narada literally means one who received the knowledge from Brahma of bhakti, and then who travels around the universe giving Narayan to everyone by imparting this knowledge. So therefore Krishna to Brahma to Narad, and then it's explained that in Narada's travels, once he came to Badrikashram, and there Vyasadeva was residing, and Vyasadeva had compiled so many Vedic literatures, yet Vyasadeva was still not satisfied. He was not satisfied that he had brought out the essence of all the knowledge for the whole world, and therefore Narada appeared, and Narada spoke to Vyasadeva and instructed him that yes, you've written so many things, but you haven't brought out the essence, and therefore you should write Srimad Bhagavatam. Therefore it's explained, Sarva Vedanta Sadam Hi Srimad Bhagavatam Ishyate Tadra Samrita Triptasya Nanyatra Shadrati Kvachit. That the sar, the very essence of the Sarva Vedanta, of all the Vedic scriptures, Srimad Bhagavatam Ishyate, are contained within Srimad Bhagavatam. And so Vyasadeva compiled the Bhagavatam, which is the essence of everything. And then it's explained that Madhvacharya, who was born in the 1200s, you see a massive gap of time here, because Vyasadeva compiled the literatures 5,000 years ago, and the next link in the chain is said to be Madhvacharya, who only appears in the 1200s. So it's not that Vyas had many disciples, but the reason why Madhvacharya is shown in our lineage is because he is the prominent teacher for us. So it said that Madhvacharya went to the Himalayas, to Badrikashram, to Uttari Badri, where Vyasadeva is staying. It's said that Vyasadeva stays there even today. There are 7 personalities who are known as Chiranjivas, so they exist beyond the universal destruction, and Vyasadeva is one of them. So Madhvacharya learned from Vyasadeva, and when Vyasadeva saw Madhvacharya's commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, he was very impressed. He said, spotless. For Vyasadeva to say that is a big thing. And in this way, he told Madhvacharya, you are empowered, now you should spread this knowledge. So then, in our parampara, it's mentioned that after Madhvacharya, there are many different teachers. Teachers that are spoken about in the Madhva Sampradaya. You can find much information about these different teachers. And then it's mentioned that finally it comes to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Our link with Madhva here is here. If you look here in the final row, then Lakshmipati Tirtha, he had a disciple who is very important to each one of us, Madhavendra Puri. Madhavendra Puri was the spiritual master of Ishvara Puri, and Ishvara Puri was the spiritual master of Lord Chaitanya. So it said that Lord Chaitanya traced the Gaudiya lineage back to the Madhva Sampradaya through Madhavendra Puri's connection with Lakshmi Patitirtha. So like that, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu introduces Harinam Sankirtan. He meets his spiritual master, Ishvara Puri, and his spiritual master tells him, Murkha tumi tomar nahik vedantadikar, Krishna mantra japa sada, ei mantra sar. He said, Murkha tumi, my spiritual master told me, you're a fool. And therefore, don't try to understand all of this knowledge in too much of its intricacy. Rather, Krishna mantra japa sada, just take the name of Krishna and always chant it, ei mantra sar. Within this mantra, you will gain the essence of everything. And so Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes, and then he has different Goswami followers, the 6 Goswamis. And what the Goswamis do is they take all of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's life, his teachings, and they write it down in beautiful literatures. It's said that Jiva Goswami, who was perhaps the one of the Goswamis who wrote the most prolifically, there was only one person in creation who wrote more books than Jiva Goswami. Want to guess who it was? Vyasadeva. After Vyasadeva, the person who wrote the next amount of voluminous literature was Jiva Goswami. And so they wrote it. And around the time of the Goswamis, just after the departure of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, was Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. And Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami wrote the most powerful elucidation on Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's life in Chaitanya Charitamrita. And then it said the next prominent teachers are around the time of Narottam Das Thakur. Narottam Das Thakur was a Shiksha disciple of Jiva Goswami. And he took all of the literature, all of the philosophical conclusions, and he turned them into very, very beautiful songs. And that was one of his main contributions. And then in the line it said, after Narottam Das Thakur, 4 generations down, comes Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is very important for us because when Srila Prabhupada was commentating on all the literatures, then he was using the commentaries of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur primarily. Some say Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur was an incarnation of Rupa Goswami. And then after Vishwanath is Jagannath Das Babaji, a great soul known as Vaishnava Sarvabhauma, the chief of all the Vaishnavas. And he is credited for different things. Perhaps the most famous is he found the birthplace of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And many other things. Sometimes the Panchatattva mantra that we sing before we sing Hare Krishna is credited to Jagannath Das Babaji. And then it said that the next link is Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur was the one who then began to see how to fulfill Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's desire to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. And therefore he was the first one who sent books abroad. And then Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, another contemporary of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, another great soul, who I'll speak about in a second. And then we have Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and then we have Srila Prabhupada. So the reason I'm just showing you different members of the Parampara is to show how much individuality there is in Krishna consciousness. Each one of these links in the Parampara are very, very individual, and they made very, very unique contributions. And sometimes you see such a distinction between them. Like here, on the left-hand side is Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, and on the right-hand side is his disciple, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. In the Gaudiya Math, they have a story actually that they say that Gaur Kishore Das Babaji was so aloof from the world that in his lifetime he never allowed anyone to take a picture of him. So someone may say, well, we have this picture here, but in the Gaudiya Math, what they actually say is that this picture was actually taken after Gård Kishoredas Babaji passed away, because he would never allow anyone to take a picture of him in his life. So they say when he passed away, someone held him from the back underneath the arms and held him up, and while holding him up, someone painted a picture of him. And that's the only picture that we have of Gård Kishoredas Babaji. This is often a story that's narrated in the Gaudiya Math. But it just shows how aloof he was. But his disciple, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, perhaps the complete polar opposite in many ways. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, my spiritual master gave me 3 instructions. Number 1, don't make any disciples. Number 2, never go to Calcutta. And number 3, do not associate with materialistic people. So once Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was lecturing, and he said proudly, my spiritual master gave me these 3 instructions, and everyone was looking at him saying, but you didn't follow them. And he said, no, I followed them perfectly. My spiritual master told me, don't make disciples. But he said, every single person who I initiated, I saw that actually they were my spiritual master, and they were representatives of my spiritual master who had come to help me in my service to my spiritual master. And therefore I didn't make any disciples, because I never saw them in that way. He said, I never went to Calcutta. But you made a temple there. Yes. I went to Calcutta, but I never stayed in Calcutta, because whenever I went there, I always stayed in the Bagh Bazaar, in the association of the Vaishnavas, and therefore I never stayed in Calcutta, which Gård Kishoredas Babaji would call the kingdom of Kali. I never stayed there. I always stayed in the association of devotees, therefore I was never in Calcutta. And he said, I never associated with materialistic people, but you invited so many people, so many eminent people. You even cooked meat for them so that they would come and help the mission. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, no, I didn't associate with them, because to associate with someone means to take something from them. But I didn't take anything from them. When they were with me, I was only giving them the association of the parampara. And therefore, I followed my spiritual master's instructions perfectly. So like this, very, very individual, very, very different, but each member of the parampara understands the heart of the spiritual master and then lives out those teachings according to their own personality. And here on the slide here, you can see the variety of personalities that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur initiated. These are different disciples, and you can see each one of them have their own personality. In the top left is Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Swami. He was very, very dear to Srila Prabhupada. They had a very, very close relationship, and he was known for his purity. He was known for his deep spiritual realization. But he admits himself, he says, when they offered me to go to the West, he was also offered to go to the West to preach. He said, this is not my personality. I cannot do this. Has to be done by someone else. And it's very interesting. He lived according to his personality. He didn't try to be someone else. In fact, it's said that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, once he saw the astrological chart of Sridhar Maharaj, and of course, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was incredible at astrology, and he just glanced at his chart, and he said, your spiritual purity is unparalleled. And he said, in this life, I can see from your chart that you will not become the main spiritual leader, because that's not written in your chart. And Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj, he lived according to his own personality. So that's a very, very beautiful lesson, that each one of us have our own part to play. Next to him is another very famous disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta. He is known as Nishikant Sanyal, Professor Sanyal. He was very, very learned, incredibly scholarly. In fact, in the Gaudiya Math, they used to say that he was the alter ego of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And he said that many of the writings of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur were published under his name. And many of his writings were published under Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's name. In other words, they were said to be inseparable, and they perfectly understood each other's mind. Sanyal was also famous as a Grihastha because he was one of the Grihasthas of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur who would earn money, and then he would give his entire earnings to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and then whatever Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would give back to him for his maintenance, that's what he would keep. So, a great scholar. But then next to him, you see another disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, completely different. Anyone know who this is? Akinchan Krishnadas Babaji. So practically, he dedicated his whole life to chanting the holy names of Krishna. In fact, no one would really ever hear anything else come out of his mouth except the holy name of Krishna. If someone would ask him a question, he would just chuckle and just chant. In fact, it's said that he had a diary, and in his diary he would write his realizations, and the final 3 entries, the third final entry in his diary, he's mentioning that the holy name is pure nectar. In the second last entry of his diary, he's mentioning that the holy name is like honey. And the final entry in his diary before he left his body is the Mahamantra. So this is actually recounted. So incredible personality. And then next to him, another disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, one of the first Western disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. His name is Sadananda Prabhu. And he was also very, very scholarly. He had studied comparative religions, I think in the University of Leipzig. He was German. And he had studied so many philosophies, but he actually read a thesis that was written by Professor Sanyal, the second one, called Sri Krishna Chaitanya. And it's amazing. He read that one thesis about Mahaprabhu. And after reading that thesis, he said the philosophy of Mahaprabhu is way beyond any other philosophy that I've read or studied. Sadananda knew Latin, Greek, Persian, German, so many languages, and he had studied, he was a master, PhD, but when he read about Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he said this philosophy is beyond anything. And so he initially was connected to Bon Maharaj, and then he got initiated by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And it's very interesting, once Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he was with Sadananda, and in front of all his disciples, he said to Sadananda, you and me, we've been together for lifetimes. So everyone was amazed. So here on the bottom left is another very, very prominent disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta. His name is Sambidananda. And Professor Sanyal, there on the top, he sponsored Sambidananda to come to London. And Sambidananda studied at university in London, and he wrote a whole PhD thesis on the philosophy of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And he said that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur wrote the outline for his thesis, and he wrote that. So you can still read that today. Very, very powerful scholarly work. And then next to him is another very dear disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. His name is Anand Das, and he was the cook of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And it said that all he would do all day in the Gaudiya Math was you just find him in the kitchen and he would just cook for the devotees. And Srila Prabhupada, obviously they were God brothers, he appreciated his cooking so much that when the Western devotees came to India, he told Yamuna Mataji to learn cooking from him. And so he was a cook, and that's what he did. And he perfected his life like that. And then next to him are the first two Western among the first Western lady disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. They were from London, and their names are Vinod Vani and Vishnu Priya. And it's amazing. They read, they were just from English families, and they read writings of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and they read writings about Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and they became convinced, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur eventually initiated them. And Vinod Vani, who's on the one on the right-hand side, she donated a temple actually to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. I grew up 5 minutes from there actually. So, and that temple is still there today. It was the first Gaudiya Math in London, if I'm not mistaken. And when she died, they accessed her will, and in her will she left everything, every single thing to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, everything. And then on the right is Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur with one of his prominent disciples, Kunja Bihari. Kunja Bihari was originally in the Ramakrishna mission, and he had understood how they expanded the Ramakrishna mission. And so when he became a disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he was basically the mastermind behind creating Gaudiya Math. And so Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur appreciated him very, very much. He said, "You're the embodiment of service, because the management, the organization, the ingenuity you've done to establish the Gaudiya Math is practically all done by Kunja Bihari." So here you see so much variety, and then of course Srila Prabhupada also received the mercy of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and because of his dedication to his spiritual master's instructions, he was able to do amazing things. So here we're basically just seeing that Guru Parampara means unity in diversity, to understand the heart of the spiritual master, to be filled with the grace of the spiritual master, and then to dedicate one's life to fulfilling what is very important to the spiritual master. And so tomorrow and the day after we'll talk more specifically about Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. But in essence, it's very important for us to understand that we are part of an incredible lineage, a lineage of outstanding personalities. And just as Srila Prabhupada wrote in today's purport, if we understand all these personalities and receive the message from them, then we can be enlightened. And if we're enlightened, then all our confusion, which keeps entering into our hearts and minds at different points in our lives, all this confusion can be cleared. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki. Okay, it's 9:20. I went over. Should we take questions for a few minutes, or a few questions? If anyone has any questions they would like to ask, or if there's any comment you would like to make, then we can. Yes.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Maharaj, for enlightening us through Guru Parampara. My question is related to like Pusti Marg, which is also quite well known in western part of India, Gujarat, which is in the lineage of Sri Vallabhacharya. Ultimately, I mean, that is also Bhakti Marg. So, and I have read somewhere that Sri Vallabhacharya and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met somewhere, and they were somewhere connected. So I'm just trying to understand, like, how that is, like, the Pushti Marg is connected in this parampara, and like what are the similarities and differences, if you can elaborate.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So it's mentioned that there are four sampradayas, four Vaishnava sampradayas, which Krishna initiates in this world. One is the Brahma Madhva Sampradaya, which is the one we're in. Then there's another Sampradaya which comes through Lakshmi Devi. This is known as the Shri Sampradaya. Ramanuja Acharya is in this Sampradaya. Then the third Sampradaya comes through the Kumaras, and that comes through Nimbarkacharya. That's known as the Kumara Sampradaya. And then the fourth Sampradaya comes from Shiva, and that comes down through Vishnu Swami. That's known as the Rudra Sampradaya. So these are the four broad Sampradayas that are given. And Vallabha, he is said to come in the Vishnu Swami Sampradaya. So Vallabhacharya, yes, he came to Jagannath Puri, and it's said that Vallabhacharya was basically in the world at the same time as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Vallabhacharya on different occasions met Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and they had different interactions. The Pushti Margis and their history of Vallabha and their understanding of him, and also their understanding of Srinathji, although similar to the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, is also slightly different. But in our understanding, Vallabhacharya, he had connection with Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu also slightly chastised Vallabhacharya. That's another story I'll tell maybe another time. But it's said that eventually, according to the Gaudiya understanding, Vallabhacharya eventually took initiation from Gadadhar Pandit. So Gadadhar Pandit, as we know, was the childhood companion of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and a member of the Panchatattva. So our understanding is that eventually Vallabhacharya took initiation from Gadadhar Pandit, but the Vallabhites have a different understanding. But essentially the teachings are very, very similar, but the Vallabhas, they worship Gopal, so Krishna in his younger form, like that. But essentially for both, the Bhagavatam is considered the most important literature to read, and so in one sense we have many, many things in common with them. They also chant Nam, but in the Pushti Marg, their mantra is Shri Krishna Saranam Mama, that I take shelter of Krishna. I take shelter of Krishna. This is what they would be. So like that. So similar, one but different. Is that okay?
Thank you so much.
Good. Anyone else like to ask anything? One more question. Time for. Yes.
When we heard about those instructions of the Guru that we follow perfectly, but for us it seems like we broke all of them. I'm just thinking what it requires for the disciple to have confidence to actually see maybe this more abstract interpretation, like some kind of maturity and confidence. How do we know, how to have this kind of confidence that, okay, my Guru Maharaj said something like this, but I'm so sure in my heart of hearts that I'm actually doing, was it some kind of test or?
Yeah. See, there are different kinds of disciples. It's said that one kind of disciple is told by the spiritual master something, and then they hear it, but they don't do it. Then it said, better than that is a disciple who is told by the spiritual master and then they do it. Better than that is a disciple who doesn't wait for the spiritual master but who inquires from the spiritual master and then they do it. And then it said, better than that is a disciple who does what their spiritual master wants without even having to ask them because they understand the mind. When Rupa Goswami wrote down the very, very beautiful verses in Jagannath Puri, Mahaprabhu was amazed because he looked at Rupa Goswami and he said, how did you understand my mind? Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale. That Rupa Goswami has understood Manobhishtam, the mind of Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Therefore, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had this relationship with his spiritual master, Gård Kishore Babaji. He understood his mind. But in the beginning, when one understands that my mind is uncontrolled, my mind is still contaminated, my mind is still subject to so much speculation, then unpurified mind cannot understand the mind of the spiritual master. And therefore, in the beginning, it's better to follow directly, follow closely what is being said. But then as one advances more and more, as one becomes purified more and more, then they will understand the heart and the mind, and then they will know why is the spiritual master saying this and what's the principle behind this. So in Sanskrit there are two words, anukarini and anusharini. Anukarini means to follow the activities or to follow the external form of something. But anusharini means to not just do that, but to understand the essence, the principle, the purpose, to meet the purpose of it. And so when one becomes more advanced and purified in mind and completely aligned in heart and mind with the spiritual master, then they can understand that without even being told directly. So yes, in the beginning, we need to focus on becoming a pure, purified mind. Okay. All right, so I think we'll pause here and we'll continue on this discussion tomorrow. And maybe now, because we've gone a little bit over time, we can start a little later, 11:15 maybe. Okay. For me, no problem. Okay, I'm okay, but for everyone else. Okay. So, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki.